Hey everyone, it is Jamie from Independent Street Tarot and Seasons with Ritual, and I want to jump on real fast today. It is May 1st. It is May Day, also known as Beltane on the Witch's Wheel, and it marks the halfway point between the summer equinox, the spring equinox and the summer solstice. So, in ancient pagan traditions, this was the start of summer. Um, because it was either hot or cold, right? It was either snow on the ground or the sun was out. So I'm being a little facetious, but so happy May Day. We still do. I mean, when I was a kid, we did May Day celebrations where we went around the maypole. Um, and celebrated. So this would be like the height of spring, depending on how you look at it, or the moving into late spring. So how I see the seasons, it's still spring season, and so to me, it's marking this halfway point, bringing on the essence of summer. Because I wait until Gemini with this calendar, right, with the astrological calendar, then move into the summer season. So however you want to celebrate Beltane or May Day. I hope you guys just do take a time out though. We are in Taurus season, which is fixed Earth. It's going to be really important to see how we start to ground ourselves for the rest of for the rest of the month, but in the upcoming year, we are out of those super intense transits of March and April. But moving into the summer, we're going to start seeing what is developing. So I just want to jump on real fast and kind of give some thoughts on this because it was coming in kind of fast and furious. And how the stuff works is if you don't kind of catch it as it's coming in, it's kind of fleeting. So um, I've been thinking about and working with the astrology. So we have right now, Venus has just moved into Aries, and this is kind of what brought this on. And so, Venus is at 0 degrees, between 0 and 1 degrees of Aries right now. She's still in conjunction with Saturn, who's in Pisces in the North Node, the lunar North Node, which is in Pisces. And Venus is the morning star now. She is self-assured, she's self-confidence. Venus rules Taurus. Like we said, we are in this Taurus season. Um, and Venus rules like our self-worth. Venus rules money. Venus rules how we value our time, how we value others, how we think people value ourselves. And a lot of times when I talk about Venus, and I was saying this with my moon group, I forget, even though like I know, but sometimes when I first think of Venus, I know she rules money, but I don't see that first. I always think of self-worth and how we give ourselves worth because that's so important right now, especially coming into this age of Aquarius where it's about ourselves as individuals and then seeing ourselves in the collective and moving out of that victim mentality. We have to remember our self-worth and we have to remember to love ourselves. In work in that work in that energy of Venus of coming from the inside out instead of the old patriarchal version of Venus who was beautiful and therefore she was showered with admiration, right? Because of how she looked or the worth she brought to something else. It really is, to me, Venus knowing who she is, knowing her self-worth, knowing that she is, of course, she's beautiful. We're all beautiful, right? And knowing that in our hearts and in radiating that out, right? Which is a good metaphor for spring as we come into bloom, right? That's why we love the spring and summer seasons, even in New Orleans when it gets oppressively hot. So Venus has moved into Aries, and right now, where we're standing, a lot of these tariffs are going to start coming into play. And we're going to start, and we're already seeing people realizing that we as the consumer have to take on that cost. And so I was kind of thinking about, you know, how do we, as people who didn't vote for maybe the current president, like how do we work within this? And because, everyone's calls it FAFO, FAFO season, right? And yesterday, and I sent this video to my mom. It was this farmer, and I didn't know this, you guys. Like I know that we import just about everything here in the United States. I really do. But what I did not know is that I didn't know we imported most of our seeds from the Netherlands. Like I had no idea. I thought we you know, used all our own seeds, I guess, because, we do have farms here. And as anyone who's maybe had like grown some plants or some flowers, like the seeds that the plant produces, unless you get a hybrid, is usually bananas. So I just figured that we we harvest our own seeds, but apparently we don't. So this man was saying that he hadn't been paying attention. He should have paid attention to the tariff talk, but he didn't. He went to go pick up his order of seeds, and this man has a large farm. And I'm assuming, I guess that maybe he grows food for consumption, but I'm guessing he also sell seeds as well. And when he went to go pick up his seeds, I think he was saying the seeds, like he was going over there to pay $4,000. The tariffs on those seeds were over $7,000. So then, whatever 4 plus 7 is, that's what he had to pay. And he was shocked because he had no idea. Um, and so, and he said, like, he was like, I don't want this to be a political video, but I just think everyone out there needs to know this. And he's right, because a lot of people are ex and were extremely uninformed how tariffs work. Okay. And then he said he's just going to have to eat that $7,000 because there is no way at this point that he can pass that cost along to his consumer because he had no idea and he had already sold X amount, hence why he bought X amount. So he now just can't say, oh, by the way, you oh, anyway. So that's where we are. So how does this come back to the astrology of where we are right now and Venus moving into Aries? So the way that I'm reading this is that Venus has moved into Aries. Um, Neptune has moved into Aries, and Pluto was going to go retrograde on the 4th, which is right there where the first quarter moon is. For everyone in my moon class, you know why I'm saying this. Okay. Um, so we'll have this first quarter moon, which is, when we start to make definite plans for this moon cycle. But I digress. So Pluto will start to station that day to go in reverse, and Pluto's at 3 degrees of Aquarius, and he's going to retrograde back to, I, I believe, just 1 degree. I don't think he's going to 0 degrees. I think he's going back to 1 degrees of Aquarius until October. So he'll be retrograded until October 13th, right? So we have 5 months. 5 is the number of change, 5 is the number of grace. And so Pluto's going to backtrack over these degrees, where we've seen a lot of innovation, a lot of, you know, new vibes come in, but also what we are experiencing right now. So he's going to backtrack over all that, right? Because Pluto is basically like the way we think. Excuse me, Aquarius is basically like the way we think. And Pluto is transmuting all of that. He is death. He is transmutation. He is in this sign of Aquarius, which is the awakening, the cosmos, the new idea, the the universe, right? But it's this new way of being coming in, right? This age of Aquarius. It's also important to remember that Aquarius's ruler, Uranus, is still in Taurus right now. And Uranus is still, I hate to say the word blowing up, but like churning the way that things used to be, right? Taurus is fixed earth. Taurus is this fixed energy. So it's been in there since 2018, 2019, grounding up all that old energy that doesn't need to be there anymore, bringing in, making all this new soil for all these new ideas to come in. So Uranus will move out of Taurus into Gemini in July and June or July, and um, but it's still it's at these last degrees of um, Taurus, and so Pluto is going to retrograde back over Aquarius. Aquarius's ruler is still churning up, moving forward these places. So if these ideas don't have anything to, they don't have anything to take root in, right? All this old energy, all these old ideas. And they're going to be highlighted because Pluto's going to go back over them. Pluto's going to be like, we got to transmute this, and this, right? That's not working. Uranus is listening to Pluto because Pluto's in Aquarius, which it rules. So when I say there's no energetic, ener no energetic energy, thank you, allow myself to introduce myself, but there's nothing energetically that's holding this old way of being and thinking. That is what I'm referring to. There's just nothing there. Um, And as people start to awaken, because Pluto's going to go over these first 3 degrees of Aquarius and really be like, this is how you're thinking. Is this really making any sense? They're really going to see quite quickly yes or no. And we talked about this in the last video, right? I've obviously been on this earth for only 47 years, but I've never really seen things where like things come around this quickly. Um, like we try to do things and we're like, again, like we always say, well, don't worry, people will find out about this person or whatever. And we think we have to sit there and wait. And I've never been in a time, I mean, as far as I can remember for this 47 years, where things, the cause and effect are happening extremely quickly, almost in real time. And so we're going to see extremely quickly, if the thought process behind what is happening with these tariffs, if it's actually going to work. And that's going to bring up, more things. And it doesn't have to be um, mean, right? Because these people are finding out. It's like talk about cold water. Like it's really finding out. And they posted this other thing where this guy went to go pay for something and it was $77. The number seven is pretty prevalent right now, right? On top of his original price. And he said, he's 100% president. Can someone explain to me how tariffs work? And if you make some, political comment or just say, that's your president, you're going to be blocked. Again, at the time all this was happening, the idea was people would look up or Google how tariffs work, and they obviously didn't. And a lot of this has to do with where they consume their news and get their information from. And we really have to start to understand that. Um, it is really easy to get your ideas across if you have lots of outlets saying the same thing, right? And if the person just is not going to do a little bit of their own research, okay? That again is part of that last the last idea of that lower Pisces, which was that illusion and delusion and confusion, right? And now Pisces is holding itself in its higher vibe, which is this, letting go, understanding, forgiveness, higher spirituality. Because Saturn is sitting in those last degrees of Pisces. So where things could be really confusing, Saturn's been sitting there and it's like, it's not that confusing, you guys, and Saturn's going to move into Aries this summer. He'll retrograde back. We'll talk more about that. But he's going to be holding, Saturn is holding that space for boundaries and for stability in these last degree points of Pisces. And, those last degree points to me are always mastery. Other astrologers will say that's when what hits the fan. And, it can go either way. But I always think at those last degrees, we should definitely understand what that sign is trying to teach us. And so Saturn is there is holding that sign. So we can start to see through this confusion and this delusion. And When I think of coming out of this age of Pisces, I always think like, how did us as a species get it so wrong? Because of what Pisces really embodies, which is this higher consciousness and this spirituality. However you see spirituality, it's not it's up how you see it and like being able to understand like the forgiveness and the rebirth and the rising. And we literally just hit it out of the ballpark on all the lower Pisces of the confusion, delusion, addiction, um, what do you call it? The narcissism. Like lower Pisces is narcissism to a T because it just can't get out of it can't see beyond its own nose. It's this the illusion, right, of grandeur. And also like that lower Mars energy, which is super egotistical and war, just war and has to be right. Okay. And the reason I bring that up is because I'm sitting here thinking, like, how do we, as everyone, no, let's not say everyone, but a lot of people start to realize that they made a mistake in the sense that they didn't look up the taxes, right? I mean, the tariffs. And just like that farmer came on and he said, I should have paid more attention. This is not a political video, but I'm just letting you know what's happening. Um, and, everyone so far, as I can tell in those comments, are showing restraint. And I just said, yes, sir, you should have paid more attention to the tariff talk. That's all I said. Because that's where we're at. And look, however you guys want to move through this and deal with this is up to you. At the same time, Venus being in Aries to me is showing, and Neptune is showing how we are supposed to help move through this time of finding out. So Neptune moved into Aries. Aries is ruled by Mars. Mars is in Leo, right? But now Mars is in its higher self to me and you can see, trust me, you can see lower Mars in full-fledged action, especially lower Mars in action in Leo when people who are presidents say things like, I'd like to be the Pope. That that doesn't get it. That they don't understand what's going on or actually what it means to be the Pope. And I know some of you could say, yeah, sure, trust me, Trump is probably more like the Pope than you would like to imagine. And I get it in that lower vibe, right? But we're talking high vibes here, people. So the higher vibe of Leo, which is that fixed fire, is the inspiration. It is the moving through life in your heart space, because Leo rules the heart. But it is that beautiful light of inspiration. And Mars is how we move. And so if we can start asking ourselves to move into that higher light of inspiration, and just leaving Mars as the spiritual warrior, as his higher self, and moving um, now inspired, right, in a higher light, if you will, or a higher vibe, if you will, but having a reason to move that is not egotistical, right? That's not all about Mars and what he thinks or whoever what this thinks. Like when they keep saying what we're going through in America is man-made, they're, to me, not wrong, right? And this can be political if you're not, but like, we had our economy was at 2.3% and now it has shrunk and now it's at, 0.3%. So we have like that what we're going through right now is man-made. When I think of the Supreme Court and the last things they went through, 100% man-made. It was, a bunch of old men on the court being sad that they weren't popular. And again, they weren't cool and their ideas weren't going through. So they made all these rulings that are now coming back to bite them in the fucking ass. But now, because we have who we have as president, everything has to be shot now back to the Supreme Court. Oh, good. So now look who's the light shining back onto. Now look who we're back, looking back to keep a level head, in the judiciary. Again, man-made. These people wanted their egos got bigger than themselves. These people in this current administration who are all in the cult of celebrity, most of them are or were talk show hosts. You know, they were just talking about this woman on the Bulwark today at the DOJ who used to be a Republican talk show. She's running the Civil Rights Department. It said they're going to lose 70% of their workforce. She tweets all the time. And, you know, she was like, when she first got the job, I think her first tweet was like, which podcast should I be on? Right? It is this idea of ego and celebrity, just out for yourself, right? That illusion that you think you know what's going on, that lower Mars, I move forward because it's all about me, um, coming head to head with this age of Aquarius, where yes, it is about the individual and then the collective, but it's this idea of how, as individuals, we still work with the collective. We celebrate people's differences, we celebrate people's uniquenesses. And the greatest, um, thing of all is that even though we're so different, we can come together and work together for a common interest. And right now, we are shredding through and seeing very distinctly these people's interest and how they only want what's good for them. And there's nothing there, again, to keep this moving because we are in this energy of the age of Aquarius where it is about the common good of everyone and not just, like they say, kings, and queens, and what was their might made right, their power, you know, um, that idea, I want to say their sovereignty, but I don't think that's the right way to say that thought. But back into this, that if it's good for the collective, it's going to move on. And it's this idea that you live in your own home, you have your own beliefs. This isn't a tough one. You go to the grocery store, you're able to buy groceries, you say hello, you hold the door open for somebody. You know what I mean? That is this level, this easy thing of this age of Aquarius. Um, it doesn't mean that you won't get irritated and things like that because we're still humans and we live in a 3D world. But it is this idea that there's nothing astrologically that is supporting authoritarianism. Those days are really in the past. And one thing that Uranus does show us, is what we're already over, right? And so Uranus being in Taurus, again, churning up the earth, right, where we plant our seeds for things to take root, we're over that. There's no place for that energetically to take root. So I was talking about, okay, so these people are starting to wake up. They are just plainly saying it. I should have paid attention. How do we meet those people with the idea of compassion? Because that is where we are when this is quite honestly ruining people's lives. I have friends that are being fired from the federal government. I have friends that have small businesses who are trying to navigate this when there is no plan on how these tariffs are supposed to work. I mean, it is awful. Okay. And so I'm thinking, well, how do we come into this with compassion when we can see the hardships that this is bringing on people that are literally man-made out of this old energy of, you could even say the age of Aries, which was warring, and then this age of Pisces, which we got really wrongly going into this age of Aquarius. And it was just like Venus being in Aries and Neptune being in Aries. Venus knowing our self-worth, Venus not being, well, you know what, too, what's coming through is also that South Node in Virgo, which is no longer being the martyr, right? We don't have to be the martyr. We don't have to put ourselves up on the cross to say, um, we're taking it on all our 30 lashes so the rest of the world can figure it out. We don't have to do that anymore. But it is this idea of having this compassion with this new energy of this new consciousness that's moved into Aries. Aries being bombarded by Venus and Neptune, which Neptune's energy in Aries, Aries knows that Neptune's energy is stronger than itself in a good way, in a respectful way, in a way of reverence. Like Neptune is there to teach Aries, you've got to have this new consciousness. There's no way around it. It doesn't mean people might get a little freaked out or mean or whatever, but it's up to us to realize we can have compassion because we can have compassion for ourselves. And it doesn't go into this idea of like bleeding heart liberalism or anything like this, but it is really understanding that these people were extremely uninformed, okay? And they really have to, I mean, we're all living with these consequences, right? But they really have to sit with these consequences. And so, again, Aries is the self. Aries is that I am presence. Aries has this new consciousness in it, and Venus just moved in there. She's in there. We have to respect this. We have to respect. It doesn't mean that, I mean, Aries is still going to pop off. Like that's lower Aries. Aries can still get pissed. But to try not to, but to try to come into this idea that I figured it out, so can others. I decided to, I don't know, like I decided to wake up, but I know I can live this way. I know others can start to live this way because the energy is moving so fast. We do want to stay more into this heart space because the more we stay in the heart space, the quicker things will also turn around. Getting out of that head space, Aquarius does rule the mind, but if, we start to think of the mind as actually the heart, that opens up that more area, especially when we think of, Aquarius being the cosmos and that heart being connected to the cosmos. Um, Venus is in Aries until June 6th, so she's got a few weeks in here, like what, 4 or 5 weeks in here to really bring her essence into Aries, right? That divine feminine energy, which we all need, no matter how we present, of compassion, of receiving, and part of the reason that she's in Aries is because he needs to receive this new consciousness, right? So she's helping soothe him in order to help him receive this new consciousness. Um, so this new consciousness is coming into that I am presence. It is also, if you want to see Venus as money, um, we need to become aware of how we make money. We need to become aware of how much we do import, you know. Um, I can't tell you, I was shocked. I didn't know we imported seeds, right? But it is this awareness, okay, of how we want to live, how we work with that. If we are this global economy, how does that work, right? If we are this, if we want to, support more of a local community, how does that work? Having these new honest conversations because those feminine signs are also about communication. So having this communication um, with this new consciousness that is in this home of the I am presence. So, and again, Pluto going retrograde on the 4th, going back over these. Um, it's not going to, listen, it's going to be rocky in the sense that people are going to start figuring out, and then we're going to have to start to figure out, how to recorrect this course. But what I hope you get out of this video is that we have a lot of heavenly support. We really do, especially for this first week of May, or, the first 7 days of May. I'll do another video um, coming up because of there's some transits coming in that are also going to be helpful, right? But it's also understanding we are in this time of great shift. We are in this time of great movement. If you feel a little sad, feel a little sad. If you want to be a little quiet, be a little quiet. Um, but also see if you can find it in your heart for some excitement because we get to shape how we want to move forward. And I know exactly what we don't want to keep doing. Like we all know this. And it might be looking a little different for everyone, but there are some core truths that we do hold. Like we do want this idea of equality. We do want this idea of you know, being able to buy and sell. We do want this idea of checks and balances, right? And however this looks, but it's got to be with the idea of the people and this idea of just one or the ultimate one that's not working, And also, if you think about the idea of America, which is checks and balances and the voice of the people, and what's being represented right now isn't that. It's just not. Like, simply, it's not. It's this one person with a couple other people trying to do their own will. I don't know why they thought this was going to work in America. But greed is a real thing and power is a real thing. And so we're working with how we can move through that and how we can change this and turn this over. And having Neptune and Venus both in Aries is really going to help that. So I hope this made sense. I hope this gives you something to think about, and maybe hopefully lights up some places that were maybe a little dark in your spirit because this is it's a crazy time. It's really a truly amazing time, and we're here to help write this timeline. And sometimes if we watch a little too much TV or too many podcasts, we can get a little bummed out. I'm the same. So I wanted to say, like, energetically, we really are moving into a higher consciousness. Neptune, Saturn's going to meet Neptune. They're going to retrograde back into Pisces because we're really just that Pisces Aries corridor is just really getting moved out because we've got to move out all this old energy of this age of Pisces because I don't think we did it correctly to begin with. Um, so that's where we're at. Okay, friends, if you have any questions, just reach out in the comments below. I hope you guys all have a really good weekend, even though it's Thursday. We can always start a little early because why not? All right, until next time.